Hi everyone, I'm Claire Manning from Thirsty Brush and welcome to Thursday Thursday. If you've not seen this show before, it's every Thursday around 2 o'clock, but definitely in the afternoon, where I will show you how to make something with some of our lovely designs. As you can see, we're going to use the Modern Floral set today, so we're going to use the stamp first, and I've just shown the coordinating dies, so we'll be using those along the way too. So first of all, I've got a piece of card. It's actually a light grey, if you can see on the camera, and I've cut it slightly smaller than a 5x7 card blank. So I'm just going to pop it into my stamping tool, and we're going to stamp out a background first using a lovely gold embossing powder from our Luminosity range. So it's one called Gold Digger, and I'll show you in a second just exactly how shiny and beautiful that is. So here I'm placing the larger of the two stamps, just slightly overlapping the card piece that I've got, the panel, and I'm going to use the smaller one as well. And I'm going to use both a couple of times to give me a really nice, simple and easy background to go on my card. Always remember when you're embossing to use an anti-static bag. This will stop your embossing powders sticking to any other areas where you don't want them, and you just want them where your lovely stamped image is. So I'm using our Luminosity ink pad, which is a lovely, really super sticky embossing ink, and it's totally clear, so then you can get the lovely effects of your shiny embossing powders from the Luminosity range or whatever you've got at home. So because it's clear and sometimes it can be hard to see whether you've got your stamp exactly where you want it, I always tend to go over 2 or 3 times, and that is where your stamping tool really comes into play here, because you can go over as many times as you want. So just taking that out my stamping tool now, get a trusty piece of paper to catch the extra powder, and this is the Gold Digger here, so it's super fine, super shiny, and it's got some anti-static in it as well, so that's also going to have an extra added bonus. So I'm doing 2 at a time here, which is fine to do. I didn't do any more than that because I didn't want the ink to dry too much, or I couldn't see where I was stamping once I moved the stamps. Using that bit of paper is great to catch all that excess. Pop it back in your pot. And now I'm going to heat set. So just cleaning my stamps first, because you're going to need them nice and clean, ready to move. Even though you're using the same stamp on the same piece of card, if you don't clean them first, you'll have some residue of embossing ink there, and then when you move them around as you're readjusting, you're going to get some kind of almost like a double embossed look, and it's not good. So I've let my heat tool really warm up first, and it's totally up to you whether you want to heat from below or above. So I'm just showing you here below, and then I'll move to the above technique. Personally, I don't really see a difference. I know some people say you get a smoother finish with some embossing powders going from below. But as you can see, as long as you let it heat up reasonably before you start, it's really, really easy to do, and these powders, it doesn't seem to make much difference. They're super smooth and super shiny either way you do it. So popping my heat tool back and get the stamping tool back out. I'm using the Eureka 101, which is my favourite stamping tool from Tony Darroch at Stamps by Me. If you want to see any more of my tutorials, there are some over on the Stamps by Me channel as well, under the Thirsty Brush playlist when I've used her studio. So I'm overlapping the stamp again. I think I just spotted a bit that I haven't set there. So overlapping the stamp again over the edge of the paper just gives a really nice effect. Using the large and the smaller, just in different areas. Anti-static bag again. In the areas that you're using, you just stop those extra bits or any fingerprints or anything like that, otherwise that powder is going to stick to any moisture on your card. Now you'll see here at the top, the stamp is overlapping into the edge because I didn't quite position it properly. So I'm just trying to get it to stamp that top bit. Nothing to do with the stamping tool of the stamp itself, just I positioned it incorrectly, but we're still managing to get it, checking it in a little bit, just so I can get a reasonably even press. If you do something like this on your own project, don't panic, carry on, and I'll show you a little bit later how to rectify any mistakes or cover up anything that hasn't completely stamped or completely embossed, so it's never a problem. So just going back in with the gold digger powder on those second stamps, and this modern floral really does look, the design is, you know, so detailed that you can use it with colouring or without colouring, and we're going to kind of do a bit of both in this project. Giving your card that little flick just before you heat set just knocks any loose powder off back into your paper, so you can easily decant it back into the pot. Do keep these powders, and in fact most embossing powders, in their original containers. I know it can be tempting to decant them sometimes, especially if you want to mix colours, etc. But do keep them in their original containers, and that keeps all that anti-static working as it should. So just a quick heat set again. Doesn't take long at all if your tool is warm. And that's going to be our lovely background. So you can see there, I'm just going to try and get it in the light so you can see the shine of the gold. There we go, you can see it there on the left. Just how shiny that gold is. And it really is like a traditional gold, which I find really useful and used in so many different ways. So let's get on to a little bit more stamping and some colouring with some alcohol markers. So I mentioned that first because you need to be using the right card type for your project depending on what you're colouring with. So the alcohol markers need a smooth cardstock, super smooth in fact, the smoother the better. So I've got a piece here, it doesn't have to be massively heavyweight, depends on what you're doing, but I really want it to be super smooth so it doesn't drink up any more of the ink from my lovely pens as it needs to. You also need to think about which ink you're going to use with a alcohol based pen. So my favourite to use with alcohol markers is Memento, and that's by the Japanese company, I never know how to say this, Tsukinko? Don't know, probably wrong. And I'm using grey flannel shade here. So again, with your stamping tool, don't feel afraid to go in a second time to get that really crisp stamping image. Clean your stamp off, and do take care to put them back on their carrier sheets. This will keep your stamps alive as long as humanly possible. If one has lost its sticky, if you've left it out or got some powder on, don't worry, just run it under some warm water with a little bit of soap or washing up liquid, and it will come back to life. So here are the alcohol markers I'm using. They are the Gossip markers by Stamps by Me, and I'm using a selection of greys for this project. So I'm just going to mark them out for you so you know which ones, if you wanted to do your own version of this using the same colours. So I'm using warm grey 4, warm grey 6 and warm grey 7. So you'll see it goes light, medium and dark in the greys. So because I've stamped in grey as well, the idea of this colouring technique is to almost lose the lines and get a kind of printed digital looking image with a really nice blend. So I'm going petal by petal with the lightest out of the 3, so the warm grey 4. For the flowers themselves, I'm just using 2 shades, Warm Grey 4 and Warm Grey 6. So go petal by petal, Warm Grey 4 all over, then take your Warm Grey 6 and just go into the middle of the petal and just do some light flicks, just up to, I don't know, about 1/3 of your petal to get a really good shade. Then go back in with your Warm Grey 4 and just go over that area just to blend the 2 colours together. So it's quite subtle because there isn't a dramatic difference in the colours themselves between Warm Grey 4 and Warm Grey 6, but it does give you, once the whole image is done, you will see how the shading really pops out. So again, just move to the next petal, the lighter, the Warm Grey 4, add some Warm Grey 6 and then go back into blend. Do note as well, you'll know this if you've used alcohol markers before, that they come out darker, and as the air dries them, they dry back lighter. So don't panic if you can't see much difference as you're colouring between the 2 shades. Once it's dried back, you will see it much easier. And in fact, that's true also when you're colouring with alcohol markers for streaks and things like that. Obviously try and keep your colouring to kind of light brush strokes. These have got beautiful brush nib on them, so it's really easy to do. But don't worry if you see any streaks. Very often, once you give it a few seconds and let it dry back, those disappear, or you can easily go back in with the lighter of the 2 colours and just do a bit of extra blending if you need to. So I'm just going petal by petal again, and I'm going right onto the stamped line. As I say, because I've stamped in a grey, you will still be able to see it from very close up, but you lose the majority of it if you colour right up to and on top of that line. It can be quite a forgiving technique this as well, because if you do go over slightly, it's really difficult to see. So I've done the petals on this flower, and some of them look dark at the moment because they need to dry back, and you might see I'm colouring in the centre with the Warm Grey 7. So within the design of the stamp, you'll notice you get this lovely centre with all these little like bits of pollen coming off. So I didn't want those to lose its intensity, so I've just gone over them with a Warm Grey 7, a darker grey, or you could even go in with a black, and I've re-gone over that stamped centre area. I'm going to do that on all 3 flowers. So that's the first flower done. Again, don't be put off by how dark it is right now, it's going to dry right back, and the more of the stamped image we do, with the light and the dark on each petal, you will get more and more of that shaded look, and the design will really start to pop out. I was thinking about speeding this section up for you so you didn't have to sit in your colouring in the same technique. However, feedback I've had from previous videos where you actually see something coloured in real time from start to finish, you really enjoyed that. So I'm leaving it at the true speed it is for you. Exactly the same technique. Each flower will look slightly different because of the layer of the petals, and actually the smaller the petals, if you can manage to get some shading in them using the same technique of the 2 shades, it really does start to pop. Once you've got the technique down, if you're feeling brave, you could do 2 petals at a time, going with the lighter shade first and then the darker, and blending the 2 petals at the same time. However, just be careful not to do too many petals together, especially where you've got a lot of detail or smaller areas to colour, because it might be difficult for you to see the lines and remember where your darker shading needs to be. My general rule is always when you're doing a 2-colour blend or a 3-colour blend like this, is to just do the lighter and then the darker at the bottom of the petal. Some people like to add some darker at the top of the petal as well, and almost have your lighter area in the middle of the area or the petal. Just depends what kind of look you're after, but I really like that feel of where shadow would be, which would always to me be the base or the centre of the flower. This flower I'm doing now has got a lot of smaller areas, so I'm just going back in and out. But exactly the same technique, just in a smaller area. Just a little tip for you for your alcohol markers. When you're working very quickly with 2 colours like this, I tend to not click the lids straight back on, just hold the lids loosely in my hand and just flick between each colour. Not ideal if you're doing lots of areas, larger areas over a period of time, because you don't want your pens to dry out, but if you're constantly working between the 2 and the ink is flowing, it's absolutely fine to do. Just remember to click them back on once you've finished each flower or larger area of your design. So nearly done on this second flower now, just going through these outer petals. This technique would work with 2 or 3 shades of any of the colours really within the Gossip range, or any other alcohol markers. But you'll see at the end of this particular card, I really loved the kind of digital, almost black and white. We are working with greys, but it gives a really cool black and white type of image with lots of shading. Just go in for do the centre now of that flower, and you'll see I have clicked the lids on properly while I'm just working with another colour, just to keep those pens nice and juicy. On to the third flower now, and back to 1 grey 4 and 1 grey 6. I'm using that same flick technique to go to each petal. You'll notice when using alcohol pens, slightly lighter brush strokes will give you a slightly lighter result, especially with this lovely brush nib. I'm using the brush nib for both colours here. However, I will be using the bullet nib for the centre of the flowers and for a little area later on. I'll show you. So this is what I meant about, you can see some streaking there in the main part of the petal. That is literally just while it's drying off, and you can see as soon as you go back in and do a blend, that starts to dry back and disappear, and you can see that lovely light to dark shading then. Alcohol markers do take a bit of practice if you used water-based pens, but they are really worth persevering with. There's tons and tons of tutorials on YouTube, and particularly the Stamps by Me channel, as these are lovely Chinese pens, and I really do recommend them. The colours and the quality of the nib and the ink is just great. I'm putting there just a few more petals to do. Nice design to use for learning this technique as well, because there's lots of areas for you to practice it and really refine your technique of doing the shading. So once this card is put together, you'll see it really uses a lot of those kind of greys along with the metallics and the gold of the embossing powder that are really around a lot at the moment in home decor and fashion and things like that as well. So it gives what's already a modern floral design a really modern look in the entire card as well. But of course you can go in and use any colours you like and make it more traditional looking or even more modern and really layer up those colours. Even colouring the background that we did earlier with the embossing powders with some of the pens as well. Maybe some lighter shades and then have this darker one on the top would look really cool. So I've finished the flowers now, so I'm going to use the bullet nib of the Warm Grey 7 again just to finish off the centres, and then I'm going to move on to the leaves. So for the leaves I'm going to use the darker of the two. That's how the flowers look. So we used 4 and 6 for the petals, and now we're going to use 6 and 7 for the leaves and just give them the same kind of shading effect, but because they're the darker two, it's really going to add some dimension and make those flowers pop even more. So exactly the same technique. You'll notice the the leaves have this line detailing. I'm kind of going over that and just using the same darker at the base of the leaf going into the lighter by adding the lighter of the two first, the Warm Grey 6, adding some Warm Grey 7 at the base of the leaf and then blending the two. However, if you wanted to go in and keep that detail of the design on the leaf, you could maybe do Warm Grey 7 all over and then go over those lines. Sorry, Warm Grey 6 all over and then go over with the lines with Warm Grey 7 to keep that detail. I just wanted it to have this kind of smooth blend. And you can see how much darker that looks then in comparison to the petals on the flowers as you get closer and closer. Smaller areas, this is where your bullet nib really comes in. And I've even gone over the stalks of the leaves a little as well. See how that really starts to pop. So working my way around the leaves. Warm Grey 6 all over. And then Warm Grey 7 for the stalk and some darker shading at the base. So keep going round, we're nearly there now, and then we'll be putting the card together. So if you're enjoying this, do like and share, subscribe as well, and click the bell if you want to be notified of my uploads. I do this full card on a Thursday every week, and then in between sometimes I'll record some extra videos Fridays I've been doing a scraps video where you use all your little scraps of card and paper and pattern papers, that kind of thing, to use them up, because we store them all and don't tend to use them as much as we should. So look out for those videos as well, but if you click the bell then you'll get notified on YouTube exactly when I release my videos. If there's particular techniques as well that you'd love to see in your card making or your paper craft, do leave a comment and I can always start making a list of them and making videos for exactly what you want to see. Just that last leaf now, and then we'll use the coordinating dies from the set to die cut that out. Can you see now, just doing that darker in the leaves is really giving that extra definition to make those flowers really pop out and give that kind of printed black and white grey look. Amazing how much depth you can achieve just with 3 shades. So I'm just going to grab the die. So there's 2 outline dies in the set, one for the larger of the 2 flowers and one for the smaller, and then some die cuts for your sentiments as well, which I'll show you in a minute. So the die will only fit one way, and you'll see it's really easy to position. Little tip for you on positioning these kind of dies: if you look at a diagonal, so pick 2 points in the design and look at a diagonal, and if you can see the edges right in the centre of the die, and you've got an even either amount of outline or the design that you can see, you know you've positioned it correctly. Just having to really shove through my die machine at the moment because my plates are so warped, so sorry for the wobbling there. So just while I get that done, so get my background, and I'm just going to adhere that onto my card blank, so just a 5x7 card blank, and I'm going to have it landscape this card, which I don't do very often, but I thought I'd give it a try just for a change. So I'm attaching the background with some foam pads. These are quite large ones, so they're going to give me a nice even background. I do like using pre-cut pieces of foam as well. I think I saw that on one of Jennifer Maguire's videos once, where she pre-cut pieces of foam, funky foam or whatever you can get hold of, in white and black. So keep them pre-cut, slightly smaller than the type of panels that you tend to use, and it's a really cost-effective way to get a really even and quick piece of foam on the back of your panels, and then you can just use your double-sided tape to adhere them. So pop it on my card, landscape as I say. And do you remember on the right hand side of the image there, some of the powder hadn't quite taken as much because I didn't position the stamp on the lip of the stamping tool. So not to worry, we're going to use our lovely design now and cover that up. So just shows you the back of that image there, and how much alcohol markers do bleed through card. So that's why I always say don't ever stamp directly onto a card blank, always do it onto a panel, even if you're just using white and white, because otherwise you'll be able to see it inside. So ahead of time, the only bit I did here was to stamp the friend, and I've heat embossed it in white on black, and then I've used the coordinating die which fits perfectly over the friend and gives a lovely drop shadow look to your die cut. And then you also get a second outline which is another millimetre roughly on top, and I've done that in some lovely rose gold glitter. So I'm just going to adhere those two now. I'm using a wet glue just with a really fine nozzle so I can get into all the fine detail of the word die. And this is the Pinflair one, which is my favourite glue. But any kind of highly tacky strong glue when you're using glitter card doesn't need an extra grab. So just position that so you've got a good 1 mil all around. It's going to need a good press on glitter card, as we know. If it's a textured one in particular, it really does need a good amount of glue and pressure. So just give it a few seconds. And there's our sentiment embellishment there, darker. That lovely friend sentiment and lovely scrolly font. It goes perfectly with the modern florals, don't you think? So then let's adhere the flowers onto our card as well and decide where we're going to put them to cover up those little areas where the embossing powder hasn't taken. This is why I say if things don't go perfectly, don't abandon things, don't chuck it away. You can always find a way to use what you've got to cover up little mistakes. It's no big deal. So once I've decided the position, I'm really indecisive here. Just add the flowers on with wet glue, same Pinflair wet glue. This is the bookbinding one, which is really fab for card making. And just position that flower on. I've slightly overlapped on the edge of the card, but don't worry, we'll trim this off in a moment. So I'm just looking for my scissors here to trim them off. Excuse me leaning over the camera, sorry about that. So just trim off those excess little bits of leaves, and I use this technique a lot. And where possible, don't chuck those extra bits away. You can add those leaves back onto your card to look like the leaves are growing back onto your design. So there's no need to waste them. And then your lovely hard work in your colouring. One on upside down, so I'm just going back in with some extra glue. But yeah, you don't want to waste any of your hard work that you've done on the colouring there and the time that you spent. So always make use of those extra pieces where you can. Just the sentiment to add now, wherever you want on the card. I really like to overlap things. I think quite a lot about the position of sentiments and detail on my card, but just go with whatever you feel looks good. So there we go. So a really different look to what I normally do with lots of colour and lots of watercolour, things like that, but I really wanted to do some extra work with my alcohol markers, and I think that works really well with that modern gold and grey look together. I hope you enjoyed that, and do join me again for Thirsty Thursday next week. And we'll be doing some more stamping and die cutting techniques. Don't forget to subscribe, feel free to share the post on Facebook, Twitter, and I'm on Instagram as well, and look out for loads of my posts and inspiration for card making.